Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Nick, and I'm just here to talk about the event and what my thoughts on what happened and the screenings themselves and the Q&As and the surprise guests. So now it's been a few days. Obviously, everyone has pretty much seen the event in some form, whether it's the Q&A or portion or watched along live on Vero or, caught bits and pieces of it on either YouTube or Twitter or whatever. So if you haven't had the chance to see the Q&A, I believe it's all up on Vero's YouTube channel. All three. So the Man of Steel, the Batman v Superman, and the Justice League screenings. And it was just a hell of an emotional weekend. And I'm so happy I was able to go there and witness that and be amongst people who feel the same way about Zack's work, as me. Because the last time I did something like this, I mentioned it in my last video that I did the other day, that it was the one-night premiere screening that they had of the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman back in 2016. And that was the closest to this as far as, it was mostly made up of people who wanted to see the movie. Because at that point, it was still, it was like a few months after the initial release of Batman v Superman. There was a lot of hate and all the critic discussion and all that stuff. So it was nice to be among mostly like-minded people outside of a few critics and people that I don't personally like to talk about or all that. But this was so much more than that. I was able to meet up with and talk to some people who I've known. So on that aspect of that was also really cool. About the event itself, so the art center where they held the screenings of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, that theater itself, to watch Batman v Superman in was great. The sound system was fantastic, the picture quality was great, and the seating was comfortable. So for me, I think I mentioned this in my last video as well, that I now have seen Batman v Superman 10 times in some form of theater, and it's tied with The Force Awakens as the movie I've seen the most in theaters. I saw that 10 times as well. I had wanted to see Batman v Superman another time in theaters, but just because of where I was in my life at that point, I couldn't afford to see it another time, even though I did waste a lot of money to go see it multiple times by myself. But to see it finally that many times, it was an amazing experience. Just watching that film again in a theater, it was just amazing. And of course, the Q&A after. So Zach and Deborah, his wife Debbie, had talked to the fans and stuff before the event started, or before the screening started, to kind of tell everyone about the raffle, I believe, and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And I was still pretty close up, and sorry, my lighting isn't great at the moment because I'm using natural lighting from the sun. But yeah, so that they addressed everyone, and I hadn't had the chance to speak with Zach yet or Debbie yet. So I just experienced that, and then we watched the movie, and then they had the panel and Q&A after, and that was a lot of fun. There were a couple of not so great questions from the fans, but it was a really great time, and I did my best to get a question in, but I unfortunately did not succeed. But I do have a funny clip that I'll include here.
Microphone.
Microphone guy.
Zach.
In the theater, when one of the volunteers for the event during the fan portion of the Q&A, they had one of the volunteers running around with a microphone to give fans the opportunity to ask a question with the microphone. So he was running back and forth on opposite ends of the theater, and at one point after the first few questions of him running around, I yelled, "Yay, microphone guy!" And then everyone, including Zach and the panelists, he said, "Yeah!" And we're all clapping. So that was pretty cool. So I was responsible for that. So that was pretty cool. So that was the closest I got to the entire weekend of having a question of any kind. Obviously, it wasn't a question, but Zach heard me, and because of that, I was doing my best to show appreciation for the microphone guy, obviously, because he was running around back and forth. But yeah, that was the closest to a question that I got in over the course of the weekend, during the Q&A portion at least. And so that was pretty cool. And the Q&A itself was a lot of fun. There's a lot of technical questions, and Zach obviously revealed the info that because fans were trying to ask him about the empty pod in Man of Steel, which originally they released a prequel comic when Man of Steel came out about an older version of Kara, or at least thousands of years older, I think. And she was the one, Kara Zor-El, Supergirl. She was originally the one in the empty pod, And Zack said that originally his plan was that I believe it was going to be either Zeus or Ares in that pod. I think he said Zeus. And that was going to be the origin for the Greek gods and the Amazons. That was all going to be tied back to Krypton. Now, I remember that being a rumor when I think it was when Batman v Superman was first coming out. And I didn't like it then. And I'll be honest, like I love a lot of Zack's ideas. This is one of the ones that I'm not a personally big fan of. And I'm seeing like that bit of news is like I've seen like on like TikTok and Twitter, people like jumping down Zack's throat of saying like, oh, how awful it was and why it's a good idea that he's not in charge of DC anymore or doing DC movies anymore. Okay, whatever. Like, look, I love Zack, obviously, but like, in my opinion, that was not a great idea. Like, I would prefer that have been the original, well, at least the comic idea of it being Supergirl. I think that could have been interesting. Tying it back to like the Greek gods and the Amazons and stuff, I think it's just, I understand Zack like explanation of it. He's trying to like make it all somewhat grounded, which like I understand because like that's why like similarly how Zack explained why Barry Allen in his movie didn't physically interact with his environment that much because of how fast he was going. He could like literally like explode, like make a person explode with the amount of speed and pressure and all that. So Zack's thinks very literally in trying to make his world as grounded as he could given the circumstances of these characters, and I understand that perspective. But for me, like I don't need that to be a thing that's all tied together. Like sometimes I like things a little more fantastical. And there are ideas of his that I like and make sense, like the whole air bubble thing with the Justice League scenes with Aquaman and Mira and all them, which like at first I wasn't a big fan of, but like I've grown used to it, so like I'm fine with it, and it actually makes the movie like kind of interesting. Like it has its own unique kind of like style as far as like the Atlantis scenes go compared to Aquaman, and those are both fine, and like I don't have a problem with either. So like that doesn't really bother me as much anymore. But like as far as like the idea with like the Amazons and Zeus and all that stuff being tied back to Krypton, that's just personally for me, in my opinion, not one of Zack's best ideas. But beyond that, other questions that were asked were great. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. I was too busy being excited about being there and seeing Zack in person. Oh, well, another thing that from that Q&A, well, actually a couple things that I loved from that Q&A that Zack, I wasn't sure if Zack broke that part or Damon Caro did, or one of the someone else, I can't remember who, someone else at the panel, I think, had brought up that in Batman v Superman, obviously there's a scene where Lois and Clark are kind of like doing it in the tub, which they start that scene of them doing it, and then they kind of cut away to Bruce, I think. So they don't show the full sex scene, but I guess there was a scene or a sequence cut of I guess they had a downstairs neighbor, Clark and Lois, who I guess they called her like Mrs. Bukowski or something, and she was very much bothered by how much Lois and Clark have sex, and she's always kind of like banging on the ceiling and telling them to knock it off. And I guess when they had sex during the tub scene, it leaked through the floor, and Clark had gone downstairs to go fix the leak. And obviously that didn't make it into the movie. I really wish that could have made it in, because obviously I think it's funny, as well as like shows like the sweet side of Clark, and also it's just like, I don't know, more of like the Lois and Clark stuff is like I'm always down for. And speaking of which, my question was going to be about, I think it was in the Art of Batman v Superman book that they had released. There's an image of Lois reaching out to Clark, and Clark's, I think, asleep on their bed, and obviously that scene wasn't in the movie either. So I wanted the context of that scene, especially because if you guys are listening to the Bitter Geeks podcast or listening to previously to the DC Films podcast, Danielle also is a big fan of Lois and Clark and wanted to know the context of that scene as well. So I was kind of asking that question for her, and as well my other friends who want to know about that scene. So that was going to be my question. Obviously didn't get answered, but that scene, or the scene that they were talking about with Mrs. Bukowski that ended up getting cut, was also a very good revelation from Zack and the crew. So that was really cool and really funny. And then probably one of my favorite parts, if not my favorite part of the panel, was the visual effects supervisor, GJ. I think it was the last question of the night. I can't remember. There might have been one or two more, but I think it was the end of it. It doesn't really matter. But so this guy came up and asked about Doomsday Clock, the Jeff Johns comic it released, I think it was like 2016, 2017, or something like that, maybe later, where it was tying in the events of Watchmen and Dr. Manhattan to the DC universe. And the fan was basically asking if Zack at some point was going to lead up to that, and Zack didn't really answer the question. But like DJ was like asking the fan who asked that, like clarifying, wait a minute, is that the Jeff Johns comic? And he's like, yeah. And then DJ just like takes his mic, drops it, and then just walks away. And then Damon Caro, the stunt coordinator, also who played Joe Chill in Batman v Superman, walked away with him. And it was just like the entire crowd. Like there was a huge roar of applause and yelling and screaming, and of course I was a part of that. So that was a lot of fun, and I think that was part of the best part of the Batman v Superman panel, at least for me. Sorry, I had to start filming again, or stop and start. Anyways, so that part of the Q&A was awesome, and obviously we all had a big laugh there at the end, and again, it sucked not being able to ask a proper question, and it sucked not having some great questions in there, but overall it was still a lot of fun, and it was probably still my favorite part of the night as far as the Q&A and panel goes. So after that, we all lined up, and Zack had a signing. It was like him, DJ was there, but he was gone by the time it was my turn to go up for the signing. So DJ was there. Patrick, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try to say it. And then Damon Caro, and then Debbie and Zack were there, and so we all lined up for their signing, and like we were all just like in line chatting it up, and then of course like I was like waiting for my turn, and it came up for my turn, and I had gone up to Damon first and told him how awesome his work is in the movies, and everyone had to make a comment about him being Joe Chill and him killing Batman, his parents, and I didn't want to be that person to say that same thing again, so I just told him how much his work like really was cool and stood out in the movie. So that was cool, and I got him to assign the back of my Man of Steel passes from opening night. And speaking of which, when I got to Debbie, and I did talk to Patrick for a minute and told him how cool his Batmobile was and stuff. Didn't get his signature though, but then it came up for Debbie, and I have a clip. It's not great, but I might include some bits and pieces here.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Debbie. Such a huge fan of the movies, and you're producing and Zack directing. Like, the movies mean so much to me. And I've actually, these are my opening or the preview night tickets that I had for Man of Steel for the last 10 years. So if you could sign these, I would love that. Thank you guys so much for doing this event and for making such great and meaningful movies. It really means a lot. San Diego.
Hey, not that far. I love Del Coronado. We go to Coronado.
I know, I've seen that. Yeah, I grew up going there quite a lot as a kid.
And I feel like we might be back to San Diego very soon.
All right. Good to hear.
Not that I'm announcing anything.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
I feel like Comic-Con is
All right.
I can't really say, but I feel like we haven't been to Comic-Con since PBS. And I feel like maybe it's time to go back.
I know, I was a little bummed when I couldn't be there with Zack surprising everyone with the Batmobile. That was the one night I couldn't go, and then I saw that the next morning. I'm like, darn it! I wish I was there. All right. Thank you, Debbie.
And she was really nice. She asked where I was from, and obviously I told her, I grew up and lived in San Diego. And her and Zack come down quite often. They stay here at a hotel called the Hotel Del on Coronado Island here, and in which I know because they've posted about it in the past. So that was we share that little bit of information. Then she broke it to me that her and Zack they're looking to be at Comic-Con this year, more than likely promoting Rebel Moon, which that sounds really exciting. Obviously, I'm not going to Comic-Con this year, so that kind of sucks. But if they have something while they're down here, I'm going to do my best to go to that. But now so real cool. And she was still just really nice, and I showed her my passes, and she said that was really cool that I kept them all these years. And at least I think she did. I was also still kind of in awe of meeting her, and she was just really nice and such a sweetheart, and everything I imagined she was, just based on what I've seen of her online and in interviews and stuff. And then of course it came my time to meet Zack, and now I'll go ahead and pull these out from right behind me. So these are my Man of Steel premiere tickets from the very first night where they had a Walmart preview night, and they had these special passes out. And as you can see, I guess I have Debbie's signature here and here, and then up top I have Zach's on both. And then, of course, I have Damon Caro's there on the back. And meeting Zach and Debbie and them, I'll talk about my meeting Zach specifically here in a sec, but having these passes all these years has really just... I wanted something to hold on to because I knew how much that movie meant to me at the time. And, you know, I was freshly 18 and freshly out of high school, and I just started my first job when Man of Steel first premiered. So this was like the first real big movie experience I had as an adult. And with Superman being a character who means so much to me, and growing up, I thought like, oh, like by the time I'm an adult or by the time I'm 18, I'm gonna be grown out of Superman and all that stuff. And out came a movie that is, if not one of my all-time favorite movies, if not one of them. And I'm glad I held on to these over the years. And now they're even more special because I have the director and his wife, who obviously, if you don't know Debbie, she helped produce these movies alongside Zach. And this means the world to me that I kept these and I now have their signatures to make them even more special. And so I'm very excited that I have these and that I kept onto them or held onto them all these years.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hi, Zach. Nick. Nice to finally meet you, man. Your movies, good. Your movies mean so much to me, man. As someone who has been battling depression for the majority of his life, these movies have connected me with so many awesome people, the fandom, and I've made so many lifelong friends who have really helped me through my mental health journey because of your movies, and I just want to say thank you for that. It really means the world to me. These movies really have saved me, so I really want to just really thank you for that.
Literally my honor. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much, Zach. And actually, so as you can see, these were from the preview night for Man of Steel from 10 years ago. I've kept these all these years.
These are like collector's items for real.
I know. That's why
I don't even have those.
I know. I've been keeping on to these. I'm like, something's gonna come up where I might want him to sign these or something.
Yeah, I know.
But so seriously, thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, of course.
It's so nice meeting you.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you, Zach.
All the best, brother.
Thank you too. I was very nervous. I didn't know what I was going to say initially, so I told him how much his films meant to me as someone who has struggled with their mental health for a long time. And I told him, like I mentioned earlier in this video, that like these movies mean so much to me and that I wouldn't have met the friends that I did without Zach's movies. And I want him to know how much they meant to me and how much his work, really affected me on a personal level. And he was so nice and really understanding about that, because I didn't mean to make it about my mental health. I was nervous. I didn't know what I was going to say, so I just started talking and just kept on talking. And he was really nice about that. And then I brought out the passes for him to sign, and he said how much cool collectible those are, because even him and Debbie don't have those. And he was really nice and really cool to meet. And like, not that I ever thought that like he was going to be like mean or anything, but like it's so nice to have someone who you've idolized in any given form be the person you expected them to be when you meet them in person. And him and Debbie were just so nice, and it was just such an amazing experience talking to them. I teared up like immediately after, and I was just so I got a loss of words at the time. And as far as like fan experiences goes, or as far as like anything involving like my love of superheroes or anything like that stuff, this is by far the coolest thing I've ever experienced. And as far as fan stuff, it's probably one of the coolest moments of my life. Obviously, marrying my wife and having kids is way up there as far as like my personal life goes. But as far as like being a fan of all this stuff, that is just absolute peak of stuff I've experienced. And it was just it really made the night that much better. And then so I talked to fans afterwards, and it was really cool, and I had a good time after that, still in awe that had happened. And as you can see, I bought this shirt that was being sold at the event with art by Jim Lee. So as you can see, has all the Leaguers there: Superman, Batman, and then you can see Darkseid there in the middle, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg. And then
It might not look great here, but the poster that Zach had initially posted on Twitter for the event was here, and I had to get myself one. And I'm not much of a poster guy these days, but I couldn't pass up on this. This was serious. This is by far my favorite poster in regards to these films. I love the restored Superman statue, and it just was just so cool. But a lot of fans got this signed, so they would buy this and then take it to have Zack sign, and then they would wait to have the ink from the Sharpies dry. But yeah, I opted not to do that. One, because I wanted the experience of having him sign something a little more unique and personal to me, but also the logistics of I didn't want to stay there waiting for the thing to dry. Some people were and having to be awkward and holding it weird. But yeah, that night was probably the best night for me. Now to get into my thoughts and feelings on the day of the Snyder Cut screening, that was a different wave of emotions. I got there on the earlier side, and I had a chance to kind of see Zach a couple of times before the movie started. I saw him briefly when he walked into the theater. I said hi to him, and then or at least the building of the theater. And then once we were all inside, he was kind of hovering around the door of the actual theater, of the IMAX theater, when we were walking in, and I got him to I got a high five from him. So that was cool as well. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures with him from the event. That's one thing I wish I had done, because the night of the signing, I wasn't sure, or at least I was under the impression that pictures were no. So I didn't ask. But then I saw a bunch of fans post pictures of them, and I'm like, oh damn it, I could have done that. But it's fine. I still have the experience of meeting him, and I have the video. You at least hear me talking to him and talking to Debbie. So at least I have that, and of course the stuff he signed. And so I had those interactions with him briefly, and then I saw Ray Porter. He was standing right in front of me, so that was kind of cool. And then the movie itself, we waited quite a while before they let us into the theater, and it was getting hot because there was a lot of us, hundreds of us, kind of crammed into this area upstairs by the theater, and so we were just all waiting there talking, and the organizers were doing their best to have us organized in a way to get us in there safely, so we aren't all rushing in. And I ended up finally getting to the theater. I think it was after 1, because that was the time it was supposed to start, but it ended up being after that, just the logistics of the event and everything and how they were organizing it. And so we ended up getting in there after 1, and I got seats in roughly the middle of the theater, so my view, I saw the entirety of the IMAX screen. And so that was pretty cool. Do I wish I could have been a little closer for stuff I'm going to mention here in a sec? Sure. But as far as viewing the movie, I was probably in the best seat that I could have been in, because I'm not looking up too much. I'm just looking straight on, and I have the full picture in front of me. I'm not missing any information other than maybe a little bit in the bottom, but other than that, not much. So we were waiting for the movie to start, and then they did a fan raffle thing. Unfortunately didn't win anything. And then Ray Fisher and Chris Terrio show up, which I also have a video of.
Love you, Ray! Woo!
So they're only a few rows in front of me. So I watched this movie with Ray Fisher and Chris Terrio in attendance. And I've had a couple of interactions with Ray over the years. My first interaction was at the Comic-Con when they were promoting Justice League initially. And it was the main cast had all been there for a signing at the DC booth. I think I mentioned it in the videos that I made at the time. And Ray made this huge big announcements to the fans at Comic-Con, and during the signing, I yelled out for Ray, and he waved back at me. Him and Ezra both had done that, and so that was cool at the time. And Ray, I don't know if he does it much anymore, but for a while, a couple years ago, he was doing Twitch streams, and I mentioned it I talked to him, or made a comment on there, and he acknowledged me, so that was pretty cool. I didn't get the chance to like talk to him one-on-one during the event, but still, well, at least in the video that I just posted the clip of him sitting down, I yelled out that we love you, Ray, and then he responded to that. So again, I have that interaction at least. And Chris Terrio obviously was there, and that's really cool. That's one thing, like, in regards to the Q&A portion at least, like, I wish fans asked Chris Terrio more questions, and they really dropped the ball. Honestly, like, the fans dropped the ball hard on the Q&A portion of Justice League Day. But I'll get to that later. And then, so the movie starts, and fans, they did the same thing on BVS that they did here, and they were like cheering for pretty much every person's name, which when they showed up in the credits at the beginning, and like it's fine if it went on for a little too long, but like one thing that bugged me is that they cheered for like everyone else's name except Amy Adams, and I'm like, guys, she's like just as important to these movies as the main superheroes, you know. So like that really bothered me, and they did the same thing with Batman v Superman too. Like no one really cheered for her like other than me, and so like that bothered me. But you know, it is what it is. But like seeing the movie on an IMAX screen in an IMAX theater, that was kick-ass, you know. And then of course we had like the intermission that was playing. I think it was The Crew at War Power from the soundtrack. That was really cool, and I'm glad I was there for that too. I didn't leave my seat just because I knew like a ton of people were going to either miss part of the movie or just going to be in the bathroom and there's going to be a long wait. So I didn't do that. I held it until after the movie, and that was cool, experiencing the intermission and stuff. And then we watched the movie, and it was all great, and there's a lot of great cheering moments. And just, I'm glad that I got to see that movie in that format on the big screen, because I don't think I'm going to be able to see that movie again like that. And it was very, very emotional, and kind of felt like, obviously, by the title of the event, Full Circle, it did feel very full circle, you know, that Zack wanted this on IMAX and wanted to screen it in IMAX for fans, and then 2 years later we were able to do that. So that was really cool, and like I'm glad I got to experience that, like me, like. And I feel bad because of course I want like my friends to be there or more fans to be there, and I wish everyone could experience it the way I did, but obviously that that didn't happen. But I just really am so happy that I was able to experience that movie in the way that Zack intended, and it was awesome. It was awesome. And then so we get to the Q&A portion of the movie, and they're introducing the panelists, and Ray Porter is the moderator, and Ray's like introducing the panelists, and it's in Zack and Ray, Chris Terrio, DJ again, the visual effects supervisor, and one of the editors whose name I feel bad for forgetting her name, but she was one of the editors in the movie. She was there too. And then I'm sure everyone knows this by now, but surprise guest walks out, and it's Ben fucking Affleck, who I also saw, you know, in 2017 when they were first promoting the movie, but no one knew he was coming, obviously, other than like Zack and like a few other people. But like, all week was telling my wife, like, you know, like I think like Zack should try to pull out all the stops for this. He's gonna pull out like at least like a couple of big names from the cast of Justice League to be there. And she kept telling me like, oh no, you gotta temper your expectations. And like, and I did. Like, I was genuinely surprised that Ben was there. Part of me thought like, okay, well, of the main cast, I think he's the most likely to show up other than Ray, because I think Ray was pretty much a given. But Ben obviously was a big surprise because he's, you know, busy. He still has his newest movie, Air, is in theaters, so I'm sure he might be doing like more press for that or whatever. But he showed up and was there for the Q&A, and that was really cool and kind of made the experience even more worth it to be there in person. And there were a good amount of good questions. I could tell that Ben was a little bored and tired of the Batman movie questions. You could tell he just wants to move on. I appreciate him being there, but I can just tell like he's kind of like emotionally drained from that whole experience, which I understand. And I'm not gonna get into that whole thing, but just him being there obviously meant a lot to us fans, and I'm sure to Zack as well, because he didn't have to be there, and he was, and that was just cool in and of itself. And the Q&A was going on, and like there was just like people asked about this. Basically the whole hashtag sell ZSJL to Netflix thing, and like Zack was as nice as he could possibly be about it, being like, you know, like, I love these movies, I love these characters, and I wish I can do more, but like I'm not, and I'm moving forward. And that was more or less his answer. And, like, that's, like, the answer I knew he was going to give. Like, I knew he wasn't going to make some announcement like, oh, we're selling it to Netflix. Like, that's not going to happen, guys. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not part of that campaign. I love Zack and I appreciate Zack so much. But, like, he's currently busy doing many other things. Like, I think this... I would love to be proven wrong. But I think this past weekend was this kind of, like, last goodbye for him and his involvement in DC. I truly think that. And I think that's just... It was a nice way of basically, like, saying goodbye and having one last big hurrah with the fandom there. And I'm glad we did it, you know? Like, it was an awesome event and it was an awesome experience. And, you know, other than, like, a few annoying questions and then, like, just... And then, like, on Friday night, I wasn't there for this, but there was, like, a fan or a couple of fans who, like, ran after Zack and Debbie's car, tried to get autographs, and they kind of ruined that part of the experience, you know. But, like, outside of a few bad eggs and dumb questions, it was just an incredible event. Again, seeing Justice League on the big screen in IMAX, that was awesome. Meeting Zack and Debbie and getting their autographs, and, you know, seeing Ray Fisher and Ben and, you know, and the crew that was there from the movies, and, you know, being there with fans, and it was just being a part of something bigger, because obviously this is all to benefit the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Like, I'm glad that they never forgot that that was more or less what this whole event was really about. And I really like that, and I really appreciated that. Obviously, as someone who struggled with mental health themselves, it was just really nice that this event went towards that. And I am so happy to be part of that experience and part of helping that cause, you know. And obviously, because it affects me on a personal level, affects Zack and Debbie on a personal level, and I just, you know, made the weekend even more emotional when thinking about that aspect of it. And it was just, you know, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I'm so grateful and blessed to have been able to go and experience that the way I did. And I'm never going to forget it, you know, and it's always going to mean the world to me that I was able to go and share that experience. So I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for me. I know I didn't talk as much about the Justice League event as the Batman v Superman one, but that was just because, you know, the movie itself, you know, not much to talk about other than how much I love the movie. And then, like, the Q&A stuff, like, while there were some good questions, but, like, nothing really, like, groundbreaking really came out of that. And other than, like, just annoying questions from fans. But, of course, like, Ben being there and Ray being there, and, of course, Zack being there was obviously a big highlight. And it was just, again, an awesome experience. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but it was just something that means so much to me, you know, and I'm glad that I was able to be there in person to witness it. So I think that's going to be it for me. I may or may not do an episode of the Bitter Geeks podcast with my friends and I, talking about the event from their perspective as people who didn't go. But no guarantee on if that's going to happen, or if it is, when it's going to be. When it happens, you'll see it up on the channel. But yeah, so if you guys like what you see here, if you're new to the channel, if you like with the content I've made, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I have made a lot of content in the last, like, year or two, but I want to try to get more content out, whether it's covering Rebel Moon or, you know, other fandom related stuff that happens, or, you know, I'm still probably gonna make Lord of the Rings videos at some point. I know no one watches those, but I still like making them. But yeah, you guys just stay tuned for that if you're interested in more of my content. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, have a good one.